Hello and welcome to No Spin. I'm Nidhi Razdan. New rules framed by the government on taking down fake news have been strongly criticized by the Editors Guild of India. A draft proposal prepared by the IT Ministry says that any piece of news that has been identified as fake by the fact-checking unit of the Press Information Bureau, or the PIB, which is essentially the government's publicity wing, will have to be taken down, including from social media platforms across the board. The country's top journalists body, the Editors Guild, issued a statement voicing concern and saying that the determination of fake news cannot be in the sole hands of the government and will result in the censorship of the press. The statement goes on to say the new rules would make it easier to muzzle free press and give sweeping powers to government agencies to take down content that the government may find problematic. So is this really an effective tool to deal with fake news, whatever that is at the moment, or is this actually amounting to censorship of the press? Well, let's go across to our panelists this evening, and I'd like to first begin with Jency Jacob, the managing editor of Boom Live, which is one of the premier fact-checking sites out there today. Jency, just to ask you, what do you make of these rules? And what is the definition of fake news? Because there seems to be some confusion here. What people like you do is to literally bust fake news, stuff that is literally, not true, and to bring facts forward. But it seems that very often the government, it calls those items as fake news, which are just, items that are critical of the government. That's not fake news.
Yeah, Nidhi, that's right. Which is why when it comes to the definition of fake news, globally there is always an understanding among fact checkers that we should not, perpetuate the term called fake news, because it's a term that we, as very well know, way back in 2016, Donald Trump weaponized it against the mainstream media. NYT is fake news, Washington Post is fake news, just because none of them agreed with him. Hence, the global understanding that let's say, differentiate it between misinformation and disinformation, where misinformation is anything that you push out when you don't know and when you're not sure about it. And disinformation is something that what organized political IT cells do, because, they have a narrative to peddle. So that aside, when we keep the definition aside, I am not understanding what the government is up to here. PIB fact checking has been in existence since the last 3 to 4 years. They have been going out and denying anything which is against the government, which I feel is strictly under their prerogative, because any government in the world has the right to do that, to say that, that what has been reported about them in the mainstream media or the digital media or television media is not right. Now, they are perfectly within their rights to do that. Now, to add a layer of power which is draconian in nature, to say that once PIB, fact-checking unit says that it is false, not just platforms, but even publishers like newspapers and TV channels or digital outfits, they will have to take it down, is quite draconian in nature. Because let me give an example here. Suppose if NDTV reports, one of your reporters report that an interministerial communication that has happened between two ministries, and you report on that story completely in a fair and balanced manner by telling the readers or your viewers that this is a discussion happening between two ministries. Now, PIB may come out and say it is false. Now, it does not mean, just because the government has not announced it, it doesn't mean that it is false. It only means that it has not been brought into action yet. But the citizens of this country do have a right to know what are the discussions happening about certain policies that affect them. Now, will that be something that they will say that, just because PIB has called it false, you'll have to take it down? That's a problematic line to take.
That's actually very important, because I'm just going to read out a couple of examples where the PIB fact check actually needed to be fact checked itself. So, for example, and News Laundry actually did a really good piece on this. In June of 2020, the PIB said, kind of, as they put it, hemmed and hawed about the presence of Chinese troops on the Indian side of the LAC, essentially saying that it hadn't happened. But 2 months later, the government went on record to say, yes, there was a transgression that happened in May of 2020. There was also a so-called fact check where they said it was fake news that the UP Special Task Force had directed their personnel and family members to delete 52 Chinese apps from their mobile phones for security reasons. Alt News had then done a fact check. They got the cops on record to say it was confirmed, and then the government actually went ahead and banned 59 Chinese apps for similar reasons just days later. So the point is, Dhanya Rajendran joining us as well, the editor-in-chief of the News Minute. She also heads a body of digital news organizations. The point, Dhanya Rajendran, is that how can the government's publicity wing arrogate to itself the powers to say what is fake news and what isn't? It is essentially the government's publicity wing.
Exactly, we have seen so many bad examples. Gen Z did take a few examples, and you were reading on the News Laundry article. I specifically remember in 2019, Somesh Jha, the journalist, had broken the story of the NSSO data on unemployment. Yes. At that time, there was a press meet called by the government. The Smriti Irani and many other ministers came on record saying this is fake news. Immediately after the elections, when the NDA 2.0 came into power, the NSO report was released, and what Somesh Jha had reported was true. So if the rules were existent at that time, the story would have been pulled down saying it's fake news. Why should any government be the authority which decides what is fake news and not? And I have many other disagreements. The government says in this amendment that the intermediaries have to take down fake news. Now, we have already gone to court, Nidhi. I am a litigant myself. I have gone to the Delhi High Court saying that we are not intermediaries. We are media organizations. So there are already many petitions before the Supreme Court and multiple high courts where we have challenged that we are not intermediaries. You cannot classify us that way. So on top of this, the government is trying to bring this amendment. Let's also not forget that there is a Shreya Singhal judgment in which the Supreme Court has once again laid out procedures if a news has to be blocked or removed. There has to be legal notices, and there has to be a court order, there has to be a committee which looks into it. So there is a clear procedure to be followed if the government does want to take down a story or block a story. This clearly the government wants to circumvent all that and give authoritative powers. And let's also not forget that if the union government wants to do this, tomorrow many state governments will want to amplify this. They will want to emulate this because many chief ministers also would not like to have negative news about them. They just branded fake news. So this definitely has to be challenged at all levels, including in the court.
Absolutely. Mr. Ranbir Pathania of the BJP is with us. Mr. Pathania, I know these are draft proposals at the moment, but I ask you the same question. Does this not amount to censoring the press? Why should the government's publicity wing decide what is fake news, given that its own track record with labeling any critical articles is actually pretty abysmal?
Nidhi, just plugging in a leftover gap. If you call a one-sentence definition to just plugging in a leftover gap. Fake news is an accepted maxim that it's a nuisance and rather a big malady, which has been eating into the social and as well as the political vitals of this country. India is a diverse country facing a diverse rainbow of challenges, maybe drug trafficking, maybe terrorism, maybe certain disturbances. So the point remains that at present, there is no legal remedy, no specific provision. There is only a provision, I will read it under the, this is section 14 of the Press Council Act of 1978, which says that the authority can only warn, admonish or censor the newspaper of a news agency. So there is no specific, I want to say, a law which can warn a particular spreader of a fake news. Though there were charges, there were affairs against the owner of the alt news also. We have seen some people also booked. There need to be a specific law. There need to be a specific legal mechanism to deal with such mechanisms. Anyhow, we never want to disturb the freedom of press
but why should that power, once again, I know Dhanya wants to interrupt because she's saying that on the facts that you've just laid out, she's contesting that. Dhanya, go ahead quickly.
No, the fact, what the BJP spokesperson is saying is that there are no laws currently. That's not right. There is section 79, section 69A. There are many ways in which fake news or any kind of news which anyone disagrees with can be blocked, removed, etc. Then, of course, there are other ways of civil defamation, criminal defamation. So it's not like other avenues do not exist.
No, so Mr. Pathania, I agree with you. Fake news is a problem in this country. You're absolutely right. But the issue is that, like I said, the PIB itself has often dubbed articles or news items as fake news. One second, as fake news when without giving any reasons of why that is fake. And those are often just articles that make the government uncomfortable. So therefore, is this the way to do it?
Maybe freedom of speech and expression is most cardinal to all the freedoms provided by the Constitution of India. And it's itself a freedom provided by the UN Charter also. So the point remains, it should not be hurt or it should not be damaged, or even we could say for a scratch even. But the point remains that freedom of speech and expression could also bloom and blossom in a most free and fair manner. once we ensure that the people are available to information which is totally correct, which is not misleading.
So only the
which
government's
doesn't,
information is
which
correct
doesn't
according
give
to
face
you?
river bills,
Only what the
which
government
doesn't
puts
create
out is correct according to you?
You see, this is just a draft law. We need to engage. We need to take everybody on board, and everybody is free to give his or her suggestion.
Okay.
My point is that not doing because it could be misused. That's
Okay,
not a
so
simple
you're saying
argument,
it's just a
simple
draft
line.
law.
Don't touch the system because it will be misused.
Let's take
That's
everyone
bad.
on board.
That's a bad conception.
Supriya
of law.
Srinit, national spokesman
Please.
of the Congress, coming
Please.
in on that. Again, Supriya, the point is that it is the government that has the power to just take down whatever news item it wants. This is the worry here.
Nidhi, there are 5 points to this, and I'm not going to mince any words. Point
You've been in the
number
media
1,
yourself.
Yes, exactly why. There are only 5 points. At the heart of this entire argument is freedom of speech and expression. But point number 1, the IT rules 2021, which were brought out in March of 2021, are in many parts of this country in courts. So what is the need to add a fresh amendment to it for public consultation? What is the rush? That's point number 1, because the IT rules themselves 2021 are under contention. The second, and I think this is a very important point, the PIB, the Press Information Bureau, which is a huge source of information for journalists and otherwise, and that's a huge interface, reports to the INB minister. And there's a huge conflict of interest. And may I also dare say in my point number 2, that also, other than the conflict of interest, we've seen a track record of the PIB fact-checking unit, fact-checking selectively, without any process, without any context.
No, I'm
So
saying
it's
that. There's a lot of stuff
And the
they
third
mark
thing-
fake news without even saying how it's fake.
And the third very important thing is that at the heart of fake news, and quite ironically, is the BJP itself. BJP ministers, their MPs, their spokespersons, their heads of IT cells have been flagged off by platforms. Platforms have said misleading. Platforms have flagged off their content as saying fake news. Platforms have written this is not the right context. So what about that? I mean, first correct your own house, put your own house in order. And may I also dare say, this government has a problem with independent fact checkers. You want to jail and imprison independent fact checkers, and they get relief from the highest court of the land, but PIB fact checking will be the last word. The last but not the least, and I think this is a very important point, even in this draft, we have no idea what is the consequence of this. What happens to an agency? Will you blacklist that? Will you cancel licenses? Will you imprison people? What happens on that? At the heart of this whole thing, and the most glaring example, and I will end by saying this, is when the report on Aadhaar being compulsory for children's nutrition program in schools came, the government's PIB fact-checking unit called it fake news. That news was called out as fake news. Then amendments were made to the Aadhaar law. Children were exempted from there. So who's going to then check the PIB fact-checking unit? I want to understand this.
Well,
Because there's a conflict
I
of
think
interest.
somebody needs to check the PIB fact-checking
Somebody
unit,
has
which
to-
is
it's
why
not-
Gen Z is
it's not
there.
making a law. It's about making a law and not thinking about the consequences. It's about making a law so
Okay.
brazenly and thinking people will just keep quiet there and take it all lying down. Sorry,
Let me
that's
get
what
Mr. PKD Nambiar. He's a political analyst who supports the BJP. Mr. Nambiar, you're a sensible person. Do you really think that the government should be getting into censorship of the press like this? Because let's just call it what it is. It's press censorship.
I think the first and foremost part is the fake news is a reality, and we have discussed on the NDTV platform at least 100 times. The only thing which we are all missing in this whole discussion, it is all about that the freedom of press will be curtailed. I don't think that anywhere it has ever mentioned that. The only thing is that today's media is not just about the television channels or the newspapers or for that matter the conventional media, but there are media which can be owned by a own media, which is called as anybody can start a channel tomorrow morning with just a mobile phone. The fake news is a reality. It is not only just related to the government information, also not just related to the information which is related to the press, but also related to the health matters. A lot of fake news was running around related to the health information and so on, vital information related to defense, law and etc.
We all agree
And
that
many
fake
of
news
these
is a problem. The question is
Correct.
that
So now
should the
coming to the next
PIB
part.
be
Now
given the
coming-
powers to get items taken down? The PIB is a publicity wing of the government of India.
I will just come to that point very quickly, Nidhi, that there was a discussion in the same channel once, maybe a year ago, wherein we were talking about the challenges of the fake news. Now we all understand there is a challenge in the with regard to the fake news. We all agree to it. Now the problem is that who is the one, by the time, most of the time, by the time authorities start acting on a fake news, the damage has already been done, whether it is health, defense, the overall communal issues or anything and everything, the damage has already been done. So it is important for somebody that in this case have to be a government of India,
Why?
and which is also a capable authority like
No,
a
it's not
PIB,
capable.
is going
It's not
to issue
capable.
that this is going to be a
We
fake
have just
news.
given you 10
But-
examples of
but
where
I think
PIB
Tanya,
fact check
I want-
actually ended up being fact checked itself. It was wrong. So how is it
Tanya, I am
capable?
not
And
saying-
why is the government's word the last word? There are articles, stories that are critical of the government. They will get taken down. They have done it repeatedly. So why is only the government capable? Jency wants to come in on that
Maybe
point. Jency, because this is...
I will just quickly give a 30,
Okay, yeah,
30
sure,
second
sure,
more.
finish
I'll
your
just
point.
tell you, in fact, yeah, even in fact, Danya was also talking about the issue is not about just the government information. There are so many informations
Yes,
available in
but
the
you
public
can't-
domain.
You can't give
and
the
if they are
government the
harming-
power to take it down is my point.
So many parts of the
Come on,
original
just relax
IT
for
rule
a minute.
2021
It is
that
not
have been
about
stayed by the
criticizing
court.
the
You
government.
want to wait into
Nobody
another
is
Okay, one
saying
second,
that
one
the
second. I want to get
But-
Jency on a point that Mr. Nambiar made, which is actually a lot of people who do follow the PIB fact check handle also point out that they have often done some good stuff. Like, when you had a lot of things out there on WhatsApp during COVID, etc., they debunked a lot of, this nonsense that was being put out there. Good, acha kiya. But, the larger point is that can they be the last word? And therefore, what is the mechanism to deal with fake news, Jency? Is it organizations like yours that are independent that need to be more, that need to be encouraged to do more?
Well, Nidhi, as far as PIB fact-checking is concerned, the question remains, first of all, is it an independent outfit or not? It's not. Secondly, who are its employees? Do we really know who's working behind that? As far as Boom is concerned or any other fact-checking outfit is concerned, or even newsrooms that are run by Dhanya or anyone else, we do all know who the editors are, who the reporters are, what's their, profile, what are they doing, what are they writing. We write only byline-led articles. We don't put out anonymous sources saying that, oh, it is false. So, everyone should believe that it is false. There is a process to it. And as far as fact checkers like us are concerned, we are certified by the International Fact Checking Network. And there is a very well laid down process about how you should be fact checking. That your fact checking should not be only on one side of the political divide. It should be fact checking everyone. Secondly, there are no source-based stories that you can use. There are only primary sources that you can go back to. When I call someone in the government, I have to quote that person. I cannot say that some source in the government has said this to us. So as far as capability of PIB fact-checking is concerned, there is no doubt that there is no capability that we are aware of, unless there are really good people behind in the government departments working on this. Maybe the government should be transparent about it and tell us who they are. I want to know if suppose someone from PIB fact-checking is calling up a minister or a ministry official and asking him about a policy news that has come out.
Absolutely.
Does he have any ability to question the minister?
Yeah.
He doesn't
Mr.
have that.
Mr. Nambiar, go ahead.
Yeah, this is I'm sorry, this is a little absurd. Anybody whomsoever goes to the Ministry of Broadcasting or the PIB website, do mention all the top people, including their address, room number, and their phone number mentioned there.
And
They are not the ones who are fact checking. They are not the ones who are putting it out.
A very small point, please.
Requires to tell that who is behind this, and I am sorry. I think a private organization do not require to give a certificate to
Mr.
the government
Nambiar,
of
do you
India.
know who's running PIB fact checking?
Very
Mr.
small
Nambiar, do you know
point,
who's
please.
running
One
it?
second.
Can you please name at least one person who's running it? Can you please name at least one person and tell us what are their credentials? You're not aware. You're not aware who's running PIB fact checking.
Have no validity at all. No validity. And I have seen the private fact checkers, the so-called the custodians of freedom of speech, they were failing one after another in hundreds of times on in the Twitter or in the social media. So I think let us not...
that is because that's an IT cell-driven campaign against some of them. So let's just call it what it is.
Can I please
Look,
ask
see,
a
they're
question?
perfectly professional people, Mr. Nambiar. Let's not
I
attack
am
them
not
for it.
saying,
Actually,
that anybody can make a
Dhanya,
mistake,
one second.
including a government.
Supriya, I'll come to you as well. Dhanya, the point is, it should actually be so-called mainstream news organizations that should be having fact-check desks separately. I mean, the fact that Gen Z and all, alt news, etc. exist is, to me, a colossal failure of the rest of us in basically doing our jobs, which is to fact check stuff, right?
Of course, I mean, the media houses themselves have to have some ethics in place and ensure that the news they put out is verified by multiple sources, etc. So it's from within the media to have, I mean, if you look at the television channels, if you look at newspapers, they all have their code of conduct, how they're supposed to run their newspapers and television channels. And I want to just, emphasize what Supriya was saying. There is already a Digital Media Rules 2021, which has been challenged. What is the government's hurry now to bring in these amendments when the initial rule has been challenged? So what is the government trying to do? Does it just simply want to block news? And to quote the BJP spokespersons, nobody is saying that the media does not put out fake news. There are lots of people who put out fake news. I mean, I think fake news itself is a wrong term. It's either misinformation or disinformation. It definitely exists. But the government cannot be the arbitrator. As in the PIB definitely cannot be. The PIB cannot decide suo motu that this story is not right, we are pulling it down. If the government strongly feels that a story has to be pulled down, there are certain procedures to follow, including going to the court. Let's also look at the Media One case, Vivi. That's the Malayalam channel which the government of India blocked one fine day. And when the channel went to court, the government gave a sealed cover report saying that he cannot disclose why the channel has been blocked, but it is against national interest. Now, of course, the Supreme Court has given a stay, and Media One is now again on air. But that case is going on. We don't know what the Supreme Court is going to
Absolutely.
say. But in instances, the government has been giving it sealed cover.
Absolutely. I'm completely out of time, but I think we have to remember that very often national interest and all of that is cited as a cover to censor and to take down press reports. And it is, very important to maintain that independence of the press. It's very important.
I'm sorry,
I would say for news organizations, Supriya, please, I'm out of time. Please appreciate that it's important for news organizations to ensure that they have fact-checking desks so that we're not actually, you don't have the government coming in and saying, well, we're going to do it for you. Thanks very much to all of you for joining us on this important issue. Let's hope that with this pushback from the Editors Guild and others, the government rethinks this draft. Thanks for joining us.